Well, at the end of part one, we had our shed foundation framed out and submitted for the city to come inspect it. And you'll be happy to know, and I'm sure you can tell by now, that they passed the inspection. So we went ahead and laid down some 3/4 inch pressure treated flooring plywood and trimmed that all out. And now we're ready to frame up a shed. So grab your nail gun and here we go. Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of the shed build. And you can see here I have a few pages of my plan stapled to our floor here. And this is what we're going to do right now, building the roof trusses. And you're probably wondering, wouldn't the next logical step be to build the walls? And the answer is yeah, normally, but there's a reason to build the roof trusses. Well, two reasons really. Is because we're going to use our nice, smooth, level platform as a big jig, really, for putting those roof trusses together, and I'll show you that in a moment. And I couldn't do that if I had already framed walls around here, because I need to be able to lay the trusses out and hang over each side of where they're going. So I'm going to do the trusses first, put them to the side, and then build the walls for them. So that's the reason for that. The other reason is I want to finish at least one of the roof trusses so I can measure the height of it. Part of the some of the restrictions that our local building ordinance has with regard to sheds is we can't go too tall on these sheds, so that's why I had to pick a fairly flat 412 roof pitch. And but I need to make sure that I stay under a certain measurement for my total height. So once I know the final height of the roof truss, I can then cut my walls to fit how you know, the height there, and just cut the walls down, because there's no give in how I do the roof trusses. 412 is as shallow as I could possibly do. So that height is done. The framing height is done. The only thing I can adjust is the wall height. So let's get started on those roof trusses. Okay, so the first thing we're going to note is that this is a blow up of the peak, and we're going to need to cut two 18.5 degree sections out of the wood so that they butt together and make a, what is that, 37 degree slope, I guess? I don't know. And then for the that's for the peak, and then for this drawing here, if I can get my shadow out of the way, is again 18.5 degrees to cut out that, what do they call this, a king post, which is that center there. I don't see everybody building rafters with those center king posts, but it seems like it makes sense to do that. It can carry a little more load in the center. I don't know, but I'll go ahead and do that. And then here is the, what do you call this? The bottom rafter, or the bottom, I don't know, bottom cord, I think is what they call it. I don't know these technical terms, I'm not a carpenter. But you can see that's the blow up of the end, which will be on either side here. So again, 18.5. So that's our big degree measurement there that we need to set into our saw, because everything seems to be at that angle. Okay, so to make my top plates, I guess, I don't know what you call them, gusset plates or something like that. I saw this in a video and I thought it was a really great, efficient way to do it. Basically, what I did was, starting at one end, basically put your pivot in your square, put your pivot on the very corner there. So you see that little line that says pivot, and then what you do here is you measure up. What I've been doing is measuring, well, with this, starting with this side, I would go about 20, like what, 21, I think 21 and a half is kind of like our, 18 and a half minus whatever, minus 45. So I'll just put it at 21. Doesn't have to be perfect, and I'll show you in a second. Mark that line, and then continue it, continue it up to a point. And so what I did is I started at that side. It gets off a little bit, but you basically go, so let's say this was the starting point, and that's at my, in this case, I'm going from the other side. I'm just doing like around 70 or 71, because that's, approximately 90 minus 18 and a half. I mean, it's just hard to see half degrees. And I'll show you it doesn't really matter to be exact. So 71 there, draw the line, extend it out, and create, and where it hits the point here, and then create a little line there. Then flip your square over, put the pivot right here, and again, go 70, about 71, and then draw that out, and just extend that out all the way to the end there. Now what that's going to do is it's going to make it to where you only have to draw these lines, and so the efficiency there is when you cut out your pieces, you just cut, and you get twice the pieces because the cutout on the top and bottoms are exactly the same. Okay guys, here's where we're at. So we've got our jig set up. There's 6 blocks of wood, scrap blocks of wood. 2, they're nailed into the end, and they're going up right there, and that's to hold the bottom joist squarely against the edge, so we know it's kind of square all the way from left to right. And then we screwed in a couple scrap blocks on either side of the top part of the rafter, and on this side too. It's just 2 scrap blocks. That way we can just simply make our 18.5 degree cuts on either board, just 2 8-foot boards, no other cut, just that cut at the end. Then lay them in here between these 2 guides, and then at the end we can just cut off wherever we feel, however far we want that soffit or whatever you call that to stick out. Okay, now as far as the plating, here is the piece of the top plate, and you saw me measure those out and make those. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's, not perfect looking, but I also just made a couple cuts so the triangle ends are off there. So that'll screw in there with a bunch of construction screws, and that'll tie this whole thing together. Then for these, instead of, I could have just cut more pieces of OSB out, but these mending plates aren't all that expensive, so I went ahead and just bought some packets of those. So that'll be there, and then the larger ones on these sides. Now, instead of cutting out a bird's mouth or whatever they call that, the way I'm going to fasten this, so we're going to have a top plate, right? A 2x4 flat sitting top plate. Notice that this bracket here is made to sit on top of a flat 2x4, right? And so that'll screw onto there, and that will be how we attach it to the top sill on both sides. And so using these, and I've got the larger mending plate there, and using those, as long as the corner doesn't go past the edge here, and it shouldn't interfere with this bracket. So I bought, I'm going to buy, I realized I bought 12 of those, but I'm going to have to buy 12 more because I keep forgetting that all these things that I just said, that top plate, the OSB top plate, and then these mending plates all have to go on both sides. So don't forget that. I have 6 trusses, and each truss has to have 12 of, well, let's see, 4 of the large ones and 2 of the small ones. So I think I have enough small ones, but I didn't buy enough of the large ones. So I'll buy a couple more packs of those. They aren't that expensive. I think it's, worth doing it. I'm not an expert on how to cut out a bird's eye or anything, so, or bird's mouth or whatever they call that. So we'll go with that. And okay, so this is the first one. It's just kind of set in there. Nothing's nailed down yet. So, But I'm going to go ahead and nail that all together, screw it all together. I'll also probably use glue as well, at least underneath that and on the actual joints. I'll put a little bit of construction adhesive or wood glue on that. So I'm going to go ahead and make this first one and call that done, and then just start cutting and making the other 6. So here we go. Well, it's the start of a new day. We've got our 6 trusses, roof trusses finished, and today we move on to the walls. This is not exactly the framing plan that I'm going to use. The back wall will be, but the front wall, well, I'm saying it's a back wall, really it's a side wall. So the longest length here, that'll be what I call the back wall. This wall here, these are really side walls just because the roof is going to go this, this way, along the short section, but we're putting the door and window on this, on there, so I'm gonna get confused with the word front and back, but because I'm considering this the front where the door and the window are going to be. But that's where I'm going to deviate drastically from these instructions here, which has, I guess is that the 10-foot? No, that's a 12-foot wall, but it has a single giant window in it. And what I'm going to be doing is building, well, I guess I don't have that. Oh yeah, I am going to be building the 6'3" double door, but then I'm going to put the window next to it. So this double door will move over by, I guess, 1 stud, and then whatever's left here, I'll center the small 24-inch window in, and then these shorter 10-foot sides are just going to be studs. So, yeah, let's get to it.
Are you filming us?
Uh-huh.
Get some views?
Mm-hmm. There's a window header. It's 27 inches, laminated with a 7/6" piece of sheathing. Makes a perfect 3-inch wide, so you can put that in your header. And for the window, the reason it's 27 is there's next to 1.5, 1.5 for the jack studs on either side of the 24-inch window. All right, well, this wall was the hardest one. It truly is. This is the business end of the entire shed, though. So this is a broad 12-foot wall. It's, you know, it's a parallel to the back, what I'm calling the back wall. Really, these are the side walls. But this is the business end of it. It's both the main door and window. It's going to be on this side, which is facing my workshop right here. So there's three, well, first of all, it's all done, and this stud is actually wrong, but it's an extra one. I did it wrong when I started framing from the left and over, and then I realized I got that measurement wrong. So no big deal, just add another stud and leave that one in. No harm in having an extra stud. So the framing, how I frame this is based on, well, my limited knowledge of carpentry and building. And also, there's a great series of videos that I'll probably refer to over and over again from, I think the channel's called Country Living. I'll provide a link in my thing. This guy had so many, just step-by-step guide on how to build a shed. The only problem was the shed he was building didn't really match with what I was building. So, but he just gives so much good information that just you could use in general. Then the second thing is the plans that I bought online were 12 bucks for a PDF I could download. Honestly, they weren't that great. They weren't step-by-step. They didn't teach you anything. They just kind of showed you some measurements and some guides, but that's about it. They didn't teach you how to really do anything. But they were good enough to get the submit pages out of that plan book in order to get the permit, you know, in order to show, oh, this is in general what, you know, the kind of shed I'm building. And then the inspiration for how to frame like windows, all I did was go into my shop and just look, because I got the same 24-inch sliding window that's going to go into that shed, and I just looked at how, well, you can't see, but I just looked at how that was framed, and that's I just followed that, the height of the jack stud, and I just did it exactly like they did. I did not build that. It was done by professionals who were permitted in less than 10 years ago. So that's how I did that. So more or less what I did was I broke up, I measured out 16 inches there, and then I put in the door on that side, measured out 2 studs, right, with a 6-foot header. It's a double 2x6 header, just like I made the window one. So that frames out a 6-foot opening, and then the header jack stud, then the stud for the next to that header, and then that's the stud that's wrong, that doesn't need to be there necessarily. But then I just sort of went from there and measured in, kind of centered a 24-inch window in. And so there's actually, again, more studs here than 16 inches. So as long as we're more than less, then we're fine. So I just framed in the edges of the window 3 inches wide, right? Why 3 inches? Well, it's a 24-inch window, and I'm putting those jack studs on the inside. So that's 1.5, 1.5. That's 3 inches in. So the 27-inch sill and header make a 24-inch opening. And then a jack stud in the center, just because it needs to be, you need to have one at least 16 inches. So that's it. Framing for the main wall with the window and door are done, and we're going to go ahead and get that set. So before we put up this wall, I cut a little bit on the bottom of the sill plate right here and right here on either side of the door. So why do you think I did that?
To have a spot for the door to go?
No, so ultimately this, when we put this in, this will be gone.
Yeah.
This is an opening. But
Okay.
why did I cut a partial cut in there?
Because we still need it to like line up when we put it up, right?
Yeah, very good. And when we needed to put it up, we're going to cut it out. But so by cutting out that notch on the bottom, when I take my Japanese pole saw, which you forgot to buy me, when I cut it out from the top, I don't need to cut into the floor.
Right.
So I could cut it. It'll free it without me, cutting into the floor. So well, I forgot to frame us putting the wall up, but there it is. Same process as last time. Have my son rescrewing in the bottom plate now, just finishing up all the screws. So we basically just leveled it, put it up, leveled it, and put the brace in the inside. So that brace goes on the inside of that stud because I already have this one on the outside and they're crisscrossing. So if I can't get to that third wall by tonight, I'll just put a couple extra screws in all my cross braces and this should be fine to hold up overnight. I think we're getting a little bit of a storm, but I don't think we're getting anything major. So there's the major two side walls done. Okay, on an end wall, the framing is a little bit different. Well, it's not that different. There's just another thing you need to think about. So on a normal wall, like this side wall here, it's just studs. We started at the end, and this is a 12-foot wall. So we have the end, and then 16, 32, 48. And so what's nice about that is you're thinking about the next step, right? It's like a chess game. The siding is going to go up next. Well, the way we've done it this way is these 4-foot wide smart panel sides will fit across 4 studs because it ends at about 48 inches, and then you've got the lip to start your next one right here. And then so you could really, without too much cutting, it's probably not going to be exact, but really if you think of a 12-foot wall, you could do 3 sheets, like with no cutting, just 3 of them vertically. So the side walls, the advice I got is if you're building an 8-foot wall shed, so think about that, 8 foot, that would be 2 even pieces of T11 siding, 4-foot panels. But if you didn't think about this before and you just started 16 inches on center from the side, you would screw up. So for an 8-foot shed, you want to put a stud right in the center and then work your way out from the center, 16, 16, and if there's a smaller stud, whatever, that's fine on either side. But that way you know that your center is exactly 4 feet and you don't have to cut your T11 siding. Now for this is a 10-foot wide, so I think what I'm going to do here is measure from the outside of that stud, which would be the outside of the wall here, right? And then I'll start going there. I am going to put an end stud in, but I'm going to go ahead and mark 16, 32, 48, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to do a center stud because that doesn't make sense for a 10-foot. But it does make sense to measure from the outside of your other wall and do it so that when you're placing your panel on, you're placing the panel right here on the end of your wall, and you'll have that matching 48-inch stud right here for your panel. So anyway, this is why this stuff is not easy. You have to think 2 steps ahead before you screw yourself and make it more difficult. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and measure off and get this side panel fit. Okay, the walls are done, and I just got this front wall done. I did this myself, and just the same way I did the back wall. The only difference is I moved this stud arbitrarily over a little bit because it was easier to get this to screw in. On the other side, that stud is so close that I'll have to drill a hole through it to get the screws in. But not a big deal. And it's still, this is just only reason I had to add this stud is because this is a 19-inch span. So just to make it compliant. Double sill plate is up. You can see that that overlaps. The top of the double sill plate overlaps with the sill plate of the other one. And so that's all the way around. That's screwed and nailed in. So we're ready to start on the roof joists, or roof trusses. Okay, here's the plan for the trusses. This is our 10-foot width here, and there's 6 of them, 1 at each end, and then 4 in the middle, about 24 inches apart. I'm going to start with putting the ones on each end, and then running a board across, and then putting in the other ones, and they'll all line up with that board. I'm using these truss clips. So they'll sit on top of, let me see if I can show you. They'll nail in to the top ledger, and then you can put your truss in. Now the problem is, though, is the ones on the end don't have, you know what I mean? You can't do that, so I've modified them like so for the ends, so that I pounded this straight, so this will get pounded into the top of the sill plate in the front and the back, and then this will get pounded into the side, and then, you know, so so I did that to 4 of those, just leveled out one edge. So let's get started on the trusses. Okay, before I proceed, I just wanted to give a quick update here. These, I did have to make another modification to these end clips, in that I had to cut off the little wings and that front brace so that nothing was proud of this. So probably if you don't have a grinder, you don't like sparks, probably use a different type of bracketing for your front, or no bracketing, just toenail or whatever. But I like these because they're very thick and heavy gauge. So anyway, so I had to cut that, and cut that off, and I did that on both sides, so that the truss, I can't say it, sits flush to the edge there. So just have to do that on the ends. So just thought I'd let you know. Still flying solo, so waiting for my son to get back to help out. But you can see I've got both of the end trusses in, and then I don't know if you can see that, but I ran a string line on a screw. Oh boy, okay, about a 1/2 inch up. I screwed it into the very top peak and ran that all the way to another screw. Okay, I can't see the sun, but okay, I can't see, but you get the idea. I ran it to a screw on the other side, and then I measured down about 24 inches and screwed that a board in to the outside there, all the way across. Same thing, measured 24 inches down. So the idea of the string, well, you can kind of imagine. The string is just to make sure all your peaks line up, as well as that board, because if I slide all the peaks in, they should touch that board. And I can also put a screw in them while I, when I put them up, I can just level them, screw them into the ledger, that little guide board, and then I can go and, after they're set, and then I can go finish screwing them in on either end. So anyway, that's where I'm done. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mark off all my other truss plates and install them, and then hopefully my son will come back and we'll go ahead and just throw up all the rest of the 4 trusses. Well, I'm calling it a day, and I'm calling this done. I left the rafter tails long, those truss tails, so those will all be cut down. But that's the framing. We're able to, we put in all the rafters, or we put in all the trusses, except for the last one that we had. We used that one on the driveway as a template and made the new one, and so we made that 7th one and installed that, and yeah, so that's going to be, these all have to be cut. They're all kind of a little uneven, so I'll put a board on the end and squeeze them all together and they'll all be flat. But you can see that they all follow that guide board, and they all peak at the line. I don't know if you can see it now because there's so much wood, but they should all be peaking at that string line. It's hard to see, yeah. So I'm happy with that. Everything seems pretty level and even. Of course, once the sheathing's on, it'll really firm everything up. But I'll just leave, all I've got left is that cross brace. We completely finished all the wood, except for the sheathing. We finished all of that wood. The only thing that's left is a couple 2x4s and some pressure treated 2x8s. So did pretty good on picking out wood, I guess, but would have been nice to have another 12 to put up for bracing. But it's sturdy enough to stand up, especially I don't think it's going to rain for the next few days. So thanks for watching. Framing's done. Next part is the sheathing and of the roof and walls and finishing the, the cosmetics.